Hi, welcome to Facebook. Yeah, Facebook Live, Georgia Institute of EMS. Uh, so, hey, I'm doing this from the home studio, and I'm doing this kind of on the fly. I've got something interesting I'm going to try today here. We're going to talk about House Bill 264, but I am pulling up Facebook on my phone because I didn't think about that part of having, the chat ready. I think I can see. Hey, I see Megan's in the chat. I guess the chat's kind of on the side here, so I'll be able to see it quite well. So, Tom sent me a video from this week that was the Transparency Project, I believe is who posted this. They are a group here in Georgia. And let me see. Yeah, Georgia Ambulance Transparency Project. They're a group here in Georgia that tries to give oversight, or actually is just asking for more transparency and how EMS works. I believe they are based out of Athens. I know I've seen their name in conjunction with some of the controversy going on in Athens with National EMS and run times and requesting reports and those kind of things. So they went to the Health and Human Services Committee meeting March 5th, it looks like, at 6 o'clock at night, and did a live video from there, which is pretty smart of them to do. And Tom sent this to me, and I've been watching. I've watched it a couple of times. So, hey, Nicole, I am doing well. So just kind of set this up because it's going to be a little hard to hear, but I'm going to play the direct video, play the audio, and then I'm going to stop it or pause it or talk over it, explain a few things because there's some terms that get mixed up by the committee, which it bothers me. It bothers me when you're proposing, and I agree with this bill, by the way. I'll go ahead and tell you now. I like what they're trying to do. I like where it's going to set up where we can go with transparency and requirements of committees and EMS services to be transparent and to share information and have oversight. I'll go ahead and say I support all of this in this bill. What gets me irritated is the people who are writing it, the people who are on this committee who are officially backing it and they're voting on it, can't get the basic understanding of what zones are versus regions. And that irritates me because they mix up those terms here. So I'm just preparing you for that, and I'll kind of explain that as we go through. So real quick, let's get some stuff out of the way. March 16th, which is in 2 weeks, right? A week from tomorrow. Well, I guess a week from 2 weekends because today is Friday. So a week from tomorrow, it will have an advanced psychomotor exam. It's already closed. You can't sign up for it, but you can come be a proctor if you're an advanced EMT or paramedic, and you'll get paid for that. Or you can come volunteer to be a body for the students to practice on for the test, and you'll be fed, and it's a good time. And especially if you're an EMT school, or if you're a firefighter, volunteer, any kind of level of medicine that you're interested in, even as a layperson, you want to see a little bit more of medicine. This is a great way to see what we teach at the school, see what the field's like, what the test is like. Especially if you're a student, this is a great way to get exposed to a psychomotor exam that you have to take later on for free. You get to see how it works, the insides of it. You get to see, usually try to rotate stations, so you'll try to get to see 2 stations in the day and see the mistakes people make, how it's supposed to work, talk with the proctors. It's a great inside opportunity to get a little bit of knowledge and take some mystery out of what's to come. So that's going on March 16th. March 13th, this coming Wednesday, we have advanced EMT orientation. March 27th, we have EMT orientation here at Georgia Institute of EMS. And if you are one of those who has procrastinated and not gotten your national registry hours or need hours for Georgia State recertification, it's that time of year, man. And you should already know this. For all paramedics, all EMTs, all advanced EMTs, now's the time to renew your numbers. And if you don't get your hours in by March 31st, you're done. You roll the dice. Maybe it catches you, maybe they don't. We've got one more last-minute opportunity for you, especially for the National Registry people who need that 25 hours of lifetime. The last week of this month, I think it's March 24th, 25th, 26th, and 27th. It's that the last Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of March. The last week of this month, we will have the last opportunity to get your refresher hours in. That will qualify you for the National Registry 25 National Live Hours. It'll also qualify you for the state of Georgia hours as well. So, all right, that is that. So let's listen to them discuss House Bill 264? Yeah, 264. I did put my code in correctly. Cool. And I'm going to turn it way up. And it is on a cell phone that is about 5 rows back from the people speaking, but they have speakers. And so we're going to do what we can with the audio. But I wanted to take it point by point and give you my understanding of it and discuss why this is important.
LC 337897S.
So there's a little confusion of what they're talking about.
Okay, you're on. Okay. All right. Section 1 just basically includes the local, these local service areas allows them to, or dictates that they have to abide by the same lobbyist disclosures as any other group.
Okay, so you kind of see my point of you worked on doing this bill. This guy's going to go on in a minute to say that he had an open door. A bunch of groups came and talked to him. He got a lot of information. They helped craft the bill with the information they gave him. And you can't tell me what the bill is about. This does not instill confidence in the people who are mandating how we work as EMS. Now, again, I agree with what this bill is doing. I think we need more transparency. I think there needs to be more oversight committees. There needs to be more citizen and political based committees that get the information, they get educated on how to read the information, and then come up with policies and plans and dictates on how this works. But you can't even tell me what the bill's about, man. Come on.
Who lobbies here at the Capitol?
Okay, so what they're talking about there is, and they're you have to go up and look up what the state of Georgia lobbying mandates are, the rules, the laws, the bills. I don't know what they are, but essentially now all of EMS, right, private ambulance companies, EMS groups, I know EMS as an industry has lobbyists that go up to the Capitol and say, hey, let's get this passed. They help push. They push and give information. And so anybody trying to work on, sounds like trying to work on a committee or do anything legally based in EMS has to follow the same disclosures as all other lobbyists. And that's a new thing. But I haven't had time to look up what lobbyists have to discuss or disclose rather. So that might not be much of anything.
I mean, I know about this bill.
Okay.
And why you're bringing it. Can you very briefly tell the committee why we're moving the bill?
Okay.
So the guy proposing the bill, bringing it to the committee, the guy who presents the bill, he's sitting at a table facing the committee, and the committee's got the long jury box thing going on, and a bunch of different representatives, state representatives are sitting there. And the female you hear speaking is, I guess, the head of the health committee. So that's
thanks to the
there.
emergency providers.
Okay, I was trying to be real quick. Let me slow down.
Okay, well, I know.
Okay, so this bill came about because of a group of advocates who thought that our state felt like the way the state oversees how our ambulances serve the citizens could be better served. I did meet with.
So he's talking about these watchdog groups, right, that have raised their voice enough. And I know there's one group, and maybe the transparency group, I think is a different group, that the person basically spearheading it is a lawyer who essentially quit his day job and raised money, obviously, to live, but quit his day job to spearhead a advocacy group to bring more transparency, because this is touching on the issue with Dunwoody, the city of Dunwoody, and them claiming all these delayed response times. Well, it's hugely a pain in the ass to get any kind of information right now on that. These are groups that are yelling about Athens and run times and not being able to get the information. So I'm going to tell you, from 20 years in the business, the state has dropped the ball on how they mandate and cover EMS. That's just a thing, right? If you've worked at multiple different agencies, especially across regions, right? There's 10 regions in Georgia. He's going to call them zones later, but it's regions, 10 regions in Georgia. And if you worked in one region, then moved to another, you'll find things work way differently. You will see pop-up ambulance services fly-by-night ambulance services that work for 6-8 months and essentially don't pay their employees and steal money and disappear or fail. Maybe they don't do anything illegal. Maybe they just are incompetent asshats and they fail. And then 3 or 4 months later, you'll see that same person start a different ambulance company. And that's wrong. And the state has dropped the ball on how it requires information from the EMS providers and how it uses that information and in transparency. Because I even asked, I went to a meeting not that long ago for Region 3 and where they were discussing AMR and the cab contract and the findings of the committee on whether or not Dunwoody should have its own service, essentially. And I said, I want the notes from the meeting. Well, I had to go. I had to go through the right to the open. They refer to it here, but the Open Documents Act or whatever. I was supposed to file a request, and so I started to do that. And I talked to EJ Daly, who is the head of Region 3. I think that's when we're in Region 3. And but I talked to EJ, and she said, "Oh, you have to file a request." Because like everybody at the table got a copy of all these notes, all these points, and everything from the meeting. But us and audience think anything. I want that. Why can't I have? Well, file a request. So I immediately went back to the office, filed a request, and she immediately contacted Tom. It's like, well, what are you going to use it for? Didn't come back to me. She went to Tom. So what are you going to use it for? Because she has to go through, and apparently it's a huge document that they're referring to. And the report from the committee, the notes from the meeting, all that is like 200 something pages. And she would have to go through and do something, read all of them, redact certain things, whatever. And there's a lot of work. And so Tom asked me to back off because I just wanted to look at it. But that's a problem. That's a problem. Not only am I a citizen in this zone, not only am I a licensed professional in this zone, I'm a licensed educator in this zone. Why can't I have that report? What are you hiding? And I don't think EJ is hiding anything specifically, but this is the state in general, right? This is the rules of how this works. Is the state has dropped the ball on open meetings, on getting the reports. You have to go through the request. God, man, I wish I remember the actual name of it. I know if you're watching, you probably understand what I'm talking about. There's a law that was passed back in the 90s that basically said governments can't hide documents anymore. The public, within reason, and there's certain guidelines of what reason is. Some things get redacted, but basically, as long as it's not classified, secret, or top secret, we, the public, can get access, but it's a pain in the ass to do that. So he's referring here that these advocacy groups are running up against that because I didn't get the document because I want to keep a good relationship with EJ, right? I just, out of curiosity, I wanted to look at it. It wasn't something my business is built on. It wasn't something that was going to change the world, but I felt like I had a right to see it. But to put her through a bunch of extra work just to exercise my rights is kind of a jackass thing to do. So that's why I pulled back and didn't do it. But that's when I learned, like, come on, seriously. And then the state website doesn't make it easy. I actually had to reach out to her 2 times before I requested it to find out exactly how to request it because it's very obscure. So these advocacy groups, whether you agree with them or not, and there's some that I've absolutely disagreed with in the past and how they do stuff, because some advocacy groups make it a witch hunt. Some just want to take a person down. I have seen that happen in Jasper County while I lived and worked there. And it wasn't about truth. It wasn't about transparency. It's about taking one person down that this lady didn't like. That was it. And he happened to be the head of the EMS at the time. So not all watchdog groups are great, but I'm saying these transparency groups that are demanding more transparency, demanding more response, and help push this bill forward are absolutely spot on. I challenge you. Go request a meeting, notes from a meeting that was an official meeting for any of the regions that you're in. Go request, find a EMS council because all the zones have them. Find an EMS council, see if you can get into the meeting, see if you can get information from it. And sometimes you might be able to, but sometimes very quickly you're going to run into a wall that says, no, you don't belong here. And that's not right. There's not industry secrets. It's not like I'm asking, I saw Norm here, so I'm going to use AmeriPro. It's not like I'm asking AmeriPro to show me their operating budget and let me see their contracts for everything. It's going, hey, I need to see run times for this month. And as a citizen, okay, where I'm coming from as a reporter, maybe you don't have to give me that. But if I'm a citizen in your territory and you're doing 911, I should be privy to that. And whether or not AmeriPro wants to give it, it's very, very difficult to do it anyway. Because you don't go straight to AmeriPro. You have to go to the state. You can't go to the, well, maybe you can, and the company's going to be like, no, we're not doing that. And I'm not asking for the right to go to AmeriPro or any company and call them out on the carpet. But there should be an oversight process. And we're going to get into that here.
All parties, all groups, my door's been very open, and we've met with a lot of groups who've had a lot of input, and that's why we've had a lot of versions on this bill. Appreciate the input that you've also added, which helps the bill tremendously. You want more detail than that?
No, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Section 1 basically says that those advocating for the emergency medical service communications program has to report just like any other lobbyist. So sections K and L has been added and just makes it very specific who those folks are. Section 2.
See, I don't have the proposed bill in front of me, but what he's saying is EMS representatives, that it has been very clearly defined in a new section of this bill of who you are and what you're doing, if that qualifies as lobbying. So that section is kind of just a gloss over. It's an add-on to, hey, we're clearly defining who has to disclose as lobbyists.
Now my line numbers going to be messed up, but each local coordinating council shall establish bylaws for its operation, conduct meetings and actions of its members. The department will approve those bylaws. Any employee, operator, contractor, or owner of an ambulance provider which provides service for a territorial zone or has submitted a proposal for a new service shall be prohibited from serving on one of these committees.
That is a huge change. So as he goes, he'll kind of explain. There's some questions later, and he tries to explain. He's not very good at it. But what happens is exactly what happened in DeKalb, right? So AMR has the entirety of DeKalb County as 911 provider. They have the contract. They're a private company that has a contract for 911 provider. There's certain rules that they have to operate by. There's certain disclosures they have to make, so on and so forth. When Dunwoody, the city of Dunwoody, started raising hell, really it's that one representative who, whatever, Narwhal or whatever his name was, he started because they wanted their own EMS. And what they went to the region committee, right, which is the zone there, or the region. See, he's got me screwing it up. The region. So region is a big chunk of area that covers a bunch of counties in Georgia, and that governs the EMS and how it works in that section of Georgia. A zone is a 911 territory. That's what a zone is. When I was in Athens, that may be different now because I know National EMS is taking over. But at one point in Athens, there was 5 or 7 zones in just Athens Clarke County for 911, and Athens Regional had 4 of them, and St. Mary's had 3 of them, something along those lines. So the 2 hospitals and ambulance services split the zones. That was their territory, and that's how it works. So typically, a county is a zone. Like Jasper County is one zone, so they want one provider to come in. But what was going to maybe happen in DeKalb was the possibility of 2 zones, was what they were asking for. Most of DeKalb County was one zone, and the city of Dunwoody and certain surrounding areas would be a second zone. So what the council, the Region 3 council, did was they made one of these committees and said, you need to go out and get us this information, X, Y, Z, make this proposal. How would it be better if we rezoned it? What would it look like? What's the bidding process? So that, and answer these questions that came up because of all these challenges. So that's how a zone works. What this bill right here in section 2 is saying is that no longer can that private ambulance service who is trying to get that zone or who owns that zone, because as long as you have the contract, you, quoting fingers, own the zone, meaning DeKalb or AMR runs DeKalb County. If they need mutual aid, they need to contract with AmeriPro, which they did for a while. If they need to contract with other surrounding counties or whatever. But AmeriPro can't just come in and start running 911. They have to be invited in, and there's certain rules and whatever. That's how zone works. I cannot tell you how many times a 911 contract has gone up for bid and somebody who didn't deserve it got it because, oh, they're on the committee that picked it, but they recused themselves because that's what that comes up. Well, how does that work? And he says, as it stands right now, you're supposed to recuse yourself. Now, thankfully, we're proposing a bill, the state of Georgia being the we, are proposing a bill that says you cannot be on that committee. You can't be on any subcommittee, any part of it at all. You cannot be there because it's a conflict of interest. And it's taken us from the 1970s until now to straighten that out. Because EMS was born in the 60s, regulations started late 60s, early 70s, and has grown, right? So it's taken us, let's just say it's from 1970 on, 80, 90, 2000, 2010, almost 50 years. Almost 50 years it has taken us to get to, hey, dummy, you're trying to get this zone and get this money. You can't be on this committee. And it drives me crazy that we ever allowed it in the first place. I don't get it. I don't know why we did it. But this bill is saying you cannot do it. I know the word is the story I was told is certain areas of North Atlanta were awarded to a certain ambulance company. And, oh, that guy, they got the owner of the ambulance company happens to be the chairman of the committee or something like that, happens to be influential in this committee and that committee. Now, it's still not going to take out the good old boy system, right? It's still not going to take out people trying to get around and make relationships because we're buddies, you know. There's nothing in it about that, but that has to be disclosed, I imagine. It depends on, I don't know what the definitions for disclosures are. But God, I hope it is. I hope it's, you know, I hope it's Joe Bob EMS service can't take this council member out and play golf and take him to dinner, wine him and dine him, which is what lobbyists do. But lobbyists have to disclose that they're representing this interest, that they're openly taking you to dinner to try to get win your support. You know, all that is disclosed, and there's limits on what you can do and how you can do it. That's the first part of this bill. And I'm hoping it says Joe Bob, who owns the ambulance service, can't take Councilman Smith out for dinner without disclosing it, because I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in companies I was working in at the time where they specifically hired a paramedic and paid him a lot of money, and he was an okay paramedic. He was all right, but he didn't warrant the money he got. Oh, except he lived in the county that they wanted to get the 911 contract for. That was coming up. He was tight with everybody on the council, and they were trying to buy their way into that contract legally. See, that's the thing. It was legal. It's probably immoral and unethical, but if everybody plays by the same rules, then why not? You know, if everybody can try to hire somebody and get buddy-buddy with places, then go for it. This fixes that, right? I found it very distasteful that the company I worked for hired this paramedic. Again, decent medic, decent guy, but they paid him probably twice what he was worth. Twice and everybody else, every other medic in the company, because that's what he demanded, because they were trying to get the county 911 service, and they were investing in him to go and get that for them. And it didn't work out. I don't know why, but we know we know that Grady got nailed not that long ago for going into firefighter meetings and basically trying to skew the view of people. Because here's what happens at a zone meeting. And it was Jackson County's the one time I went to, so that's my limited experience. But here's what happens is, for a while, the county's like, you know what, we're done with this mess. We're going to open up bids, and we're going to have meetings on this date, and this date for this purpose, and this purpose. And it's a build up to the final, here's how we're going to take bids and this and that. And then the community goes crazy. And in Jackson County, when they said we're going to stop having it all as one service, we're going to look at the possibility of keeping a county-based service or open up bids from other industries. 5 different ambulance companies showed up to represent themselves and to be at those meetings. But a ton of volunteer firefighters who honestly at the time did not know their ass from their elbow about what was going on in the politics of the county, did not know what was going on in running a service. They just, I thought at the time, you're making it up. No, there were there were people in power going to the volunteer meetings and stirring the shit. I'm just going to say it that way. They just stirred the shit and told them lies. Oh, if a private company comes in, they won't have to be bound by law. They won't have to come and stand by your football games. They don't have to help you at community events. Guess what, dumbass? And I wish I was who I am now then, because I would have said it in that meeting when somebody said that. I would have said, guess what, dumbass? There's no law saying that the county has to do it now. There's literally no law saying that we have to have a ambulance sitting there at the football game. It's super safe and it makes the community feel better, but the county doesn't have to do that. As a county employee running this ambulance, I don't have to come to your community event and be there. We do it because it builds community. But while they were giving you a half truth of, oh, this private company won't be bound by law, but there's no law. And that's what happens. And so these volunteers showed up in force, in uniform, to basically shout down private, take no bids. Private. And I stood up there in front of everybody, having been manipulated in certain ways and realizing at the moment, when I stood up and said that, it's like, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to give this report that I prepared, but I'm going to tell you about my experience with private ambulance companies, because I feel like I've been manipulated both by you, the council members, and I pointed right at the person who had been manipulating me, and by the person who had fallen in hook, line, and sinker. And we're being manipulated to give you reasons to oust this one person. The council member happened to be the head of the watchdog group that was going after Ed Westbrook at the time. And she gave up on the watchdog group and got herself elected as a council member. And the whole thing was just to get rid of him, period. And she got what she wanted, and she manipulated me to do it. And I called it out in public, and I apologized to him. I said, I never came after you. You and I have had our conversations, and we need more for EMS. And I took that tactic and I presented my thing. And I said, I'm going to walk out of here knowing that you're not going to change anything, that this was just a circus to get the firefighters all stirred up and afraid, and to get the person you didn't want in power out of power, and nothing's going to improve in this community, because what you absolutely need to do is bring in a private ambulance service whose livelihood depends on how they treat the community and the money they can get out of transports. Because when you get paid by how you do your job, you do your job better. Anyway, that's what happens in these zonings. And then sure enough, what happened was they're going to take it under advisement. 2 weeks later, they had a closed council meeting that nobody can come to, and they voted, and I use air quotes on voted, because we can't be there. We couldn't see what happened. And then it was, oh, well, we're going to hire a new director. We're just going to split this off. EMS is still under the county. It's going to answer directly to the commissioners, which is a dumb idea. And we're going to hire a director. And it went downhill from there, and I ended up leaving the service. I ended up moving out of the county because it was just dumb. The whole thing was horribly done. And that's what has happened in the past, is these closed secret meetings. It's only allowing certain people in. It's one. I've heard stories, again, none of these are first person stories, but this one company got to see all the other bids, and which is supposed to be illegal. It's supposed to be under guidelines that you can't do that. But they got to see everybody else's bid, so they bid under that. There have been plenty of times that counties have gone with a much higher, like twice as expensive, higher bid for a service, and it didn't make sense to the outside world because they had private meetings, and the service they were getting was not even what. So at one point I was national. I was learning how they do bids and the process of all this, and national, and I love that Huey read me in on it and let me see the process and understand the business of it. That here's how they put together their bid. Here's what they're offering. Here's what it costs them as a business. Here's what they're asking for and promising. And And the company that ended up getting the bid for whatever national was competing for was at least 2 times more expensive. So, and we've seen reports of Grady pulling that tactic all the time. We're going to give you this. And once everything dies down, they pull back, and all of a sudden you're not getting what they said they're promising, but I guarantee you they're meeting their contractual obligations. And what people say and the contracts are 2 different things. So this bill says, part 2 of this bill says, you, Grady, don't get to be on the committee to choose. You can't have a personnel on there. You cannot be connected to it in any way. You, AmeriPro, who's still, I think, a solid company. So, and one thing I was just calling out people I thought was bad. And I don't like Grady. I don't like their tactics. I don't like how they operate in the EMS system, but I think their medics do the best job they can with what they have. I mean, you're talking about downtown, man, they get slammed. But Grady has other counties, and the way they run their service in those counties, I think it's distasteful. I think it could be better. I think there should be more. And so somebody like Grady will come back to me and like, well, they only want to pay this much. I can only give. Then we got to fix the system. We got to fix those council members on the other side. He's like, I only want to give you $50 a call. Well, you're an effing moron, and I'm not going to come do a job in there for that kind of money because it cost me $800 to crank the damn ambulance and go on that call. You know, there has to be more give and take. So part of this bill, Section 2, is saying we're getting rid of that part of that good old boy system that was, oh, I recuse myself, but I'm the chairman of the council. So, hey, Bob, if you want that thing you're trying to push for approved, you're going to give it to my company. I guarantee you that's how some of those conversations go. This bill stops that.
Subcommittees or any group that is involved in the selection of ambulance providers for a territorial zone or from voting on any proposal for new service. Secondly, within 10 days of receiving the recommendation from the board, a provider may request a hearing on that recommendation. Thirdly, the decision is final unless an aggrieved party makes an appeal pursuant to the Georgia Administrative Procedures Act. And then yesterday, we added that all these councils are subject to the open meetings. And I appreciate you putting that in.
They talk about that a little bit more in a second, but that's a huge key to this bill, is that all official committees are subject to the Open Meetings Act. Now, if this passes the state, now this has not become a law. This hasn't hit the state legislature yet. This was just approved by the I want to get it right here. So let me scroll up. The Health and Human Services Committee for the state. So this is where it got approved. Dude, open meetings being a part of that second section is huge. It means no more, you know, what Jasper County did, they would not be able to do after this passes, is you cannot have a closed commissioner meeting to vote on something that affects EMS and public service. You have to allow people in, and we get the information. So that means that after this passes, the next Region 3 meeting I go to, I get a packet of information handed to me, and it's easily available if I request it. That's what this is supposed to mean.
Thirdly, on standards, the final Section 3, and this is going to give them some time because these are some changes. So by July 1st of 2020, the department will make recommendations to each local coordinating council based on the territorial zone, taking into account for differences in geography, population, availability to emergency rooms, and other factors, so that each coordinating entity shall be treated differently, because Metro Atlanta is obviously very different than.
What that is saying is that big controversy with the city of Decatur going, oh, the average run call time is blah, blah, and we talked about, right? We talked at least 2 episodes on, you don't know what you're talking about with, there's no such thing as an average call time across the nation. There's too many differences across the nation. There's no national standard for response times, all that. What he is saying is the committee, or the department rather, the Health and Human Services Department, Public Safety Department, the Public Safety Georgia Department, will make recommendations based on your territory with these markers. How many ambulances are available? Is it spread out? Like, again, I'll go back to Jasper County, where we were in the north end of the county at the lake in one station. And if we had to go to, on the map, what should be a straight line, 3 minutes, 5 minutes away from us, but the way the county is laid out geographically, we had to go 10 to 15 minutes into town, hit a U-turn, and come another 10, 15 minutes back up. And so geographically on the map, we were a stone's throw away from it, but the city took the call because they could get there a lot faster than we could. They're talking about taking that into account and recommending call times for these standards. And it's going to take till 2020 for this to go into effect. And that's a big change. And they're about to talk about reporting here too, but that's huge. That is hugely important. And that is exactly what we need. We need actual standardized times. And by standardized, I mean, you meet this criteria. You have a population of X thousands of people, right? That makes one criteria. So Jasper County had at the time 14,000 people when I lived there. I would say Fulton County probably has upwards of 1 million people. I know the city of Atlanta boasts like 4 million people, but the city covers a couple of different counties. So, those are hugely different standards, right? DeKalb alone has around 50 ambulances in the county and five or six, 7 hospitals that are reasonably distanced. And so DeKalb County is going to have a different standard on run times because they also have what Jasper County doesn't, a ton of traffic. They have a ton of bodies on the road. And so that standard is going to be, okay, you have X amount of residents in the county, you have X amount of ambulances, you have X level of call volume, you've got this kind of traffic, bam. But here for that standard, you meet this ranking, here's your expected call time, your response time. That's what we need in Georgia, to where you go then to, again, Jasper County, pulling on my experience, hey, you're on the very bottom rung. You've got 14,000 citizens. You got 2 ambulances, a volunteer fire department, 0 traffic. Your call volumes, maybe 1 or 2 calls a day. Your response time, because your geography and everything else, this is your standard response time. And that's what you should be able to reasonably meet. And that is what this section is talking about, is that over time with studies, and then we're going to get into transparency here in a second, but with studies and time, by 2020, July 1st, 2020, the department will start being able to dictate response time standards for your area.
In rural Georgia, it's going to give them a full year to implement these. So on or after October 1st, 2020, each ambulance provider in a territorial zone shall submit a quarterly report to the local coordinating entity detailing these 3 things: the number of 911 calls received by the ambulance provider, the number of calls answered by the provider, and then the response time from the time the ambulance unit was notified, and then details of that call response.
Boom. A 3-point plan that says this is exactly what you have to tell us. And it's quarterly. Every 3 months, all providers of 911 service have to turn this in to their coordinating entity, which would be your region director. That is awesome. That cuts out, honestly, I mean, I sided with with AMR in the cab during that battle. I made friends with Terrence and understood his side of it, and going with my experience. But if AMR was doing wrong, I'd call them out too in this. But that would clear up all the BS that was coming down. And I told you that at the time. I told you there's BS times being thrown down on the table, cherry-picked reports of, oh, they waited so long, blah, blah, blah. Shut up. No, they didn't. They didn't. It was cherry-picked. It was drama. This standardized reporting to where how many calls do you get for 911? How many did you run? I love that. How many did you run? Because as we know in the busier counties, you're not running all the calls you're getting, right? Mutual aid's coming in. Other ambulance services are running that for you. They're jumping in. So that's a great factor. Is, okay, you got, I'm going to keep the number simple. You got 20 calls in 3 months, which is stupid low, but go with me here. But you only ran 18 of them. Okay. So why, and they look at why. Do we need to encourage the county to give you more money, to put up more ambulances? Do we require, and I guarantee you that part of the bill, that's what they're looking at, is how many did you run? If you only ran 50% of your calls, then that contract has to be changed and you have to be required to put up X amount of ambulances, but not for free. I would imagine. I mean, this bill doesn't deal with that, but I guarantee you this is building the steps to that of, oh, hey, the DeKalb County is the contract. It was bad, and it was admittedly bad by the chief of the DeKalb County. AMR rushed in because they had to. Rural Metro was out. They pulled out 30 days. I mean, there's no time to really negotiate. And AMR agreed to the terms of the contract, but the terms were 30-something trucks. Yeah, I mean, it was a ridiculously low number of trucks that the county was paying for. Well, they ultimately did, what did I say, 48, 50 trucks at one time. That means they're going over budget. That means they're not getting paid essentially per the contract. Now, the CAB may have worked with them. They may have helped, but just black and white on paper, that means they're going beyond the contract and not getting paid for that. And that happens. That happens way too often. So what this is building towards is cutting that out, going, hey, this is the call volume in your county for your provider. But they were only able to run 75% of those calls because they were overwhelmed. We've got to change that contract so that so you have to, with that call volume, you've got to have X amount of trucks, period. And then y'all have to figure out how to pay for it. And we'll see where that goes. Then the third part of that is the response time from when the ambulance was notified to the scene arrival, and then the details of the response times. Super important. Super thing, and that's measurable statistics. That way we can truly see, hey, we've done research on this reporting, and let's say the DeKalb should have a 15-minute response time. I mean, that's the high end, 15 minutes, but they're doing it in 18 consistently. Why? And it because you have measurable reported numbers that everybody reports the same numbers in the same way. They all report the same three things. And now you can compare regions, and that's how you're going to get some of that data too of, hey, Jasper County needs to be regulated way differently than DeKalb County does as far as response times and those kind of things.
And then these reports will be submitted back to the agency so that they'll be available for review. And that's the bill.
So what they're saying is, after the councils get the numbers and process them, they're going to interpret it, right? And then they're going to submit it back to the agency, Jasper County 911, AMR, whoever's running the 911, for them to review with notes saying, hey, here's the standards, here's what you should have hit, here's the percentage, blah, blah, blah. And it's a report card. That kind of give and take on information is absolutely what is needed in EMS to keep things right.
I think the advocates and many of the zones across our state have very good ambulance service, but just like in anything, there are some bad players. In the areas where the constituents, their constituents, the people using ambulance service, felt like there had been really bad service. And when you need an ambulance, you need it. You don't need it 30 minutes later if it's a true medical emergency. And they're running way over what is the sort of average acceptable time in getting to people. The other thing they said,
one of the arguments that AMR gave, and I backed them on this because I've been in EMS for 20 something years, and I get this, is that some of those big run times were outliers and they're being cherry picked as examples that aren't true. And I've had students, I've had medics, I've had people talk to me about being in the cab, in the south side of the cab, and all the trucks were unavailable. They were hanging, we talked about this, right? Sitting on the wall at the cab or this or that, but the trucks were busy one way or the other. It got overwhelmed. And the only available trucks in the south end for a north end call, and GPS says it's going to be 30 minutes to get from where they are to that call, but they're the only truck available. And this helps identify outliers, and then maybe maybe this will lead to some legislation that says hospitals got to come up with a better way to get patients in and out of the hospital. That will help. Maybe it'll encourage companies either through, hey, if you hit your numbers, here's some extra money from the state, because I know the state doesn't pay 911. The counties that the 911 service is in pays the 911. But maybe the state can give the county some, hey, if your service that you're using hits these markers, we'll give you some support to help pay for that. That's a good incentive. A negative incentive would be, hey, if you're not hitting these standards, you're going to get fined, and you're going to find a lot of money. And so when that company knows they're going to get fined, they're going to turn around to you, the employee who's not going 10-8 fast enough, and yell at you for not jumping the call because you're 5 minutes away, but chose to let that other ambulance take it instead of getting your truck clean and get 10-8. There's ways that this can build to. This could be somewhat detrimental as well, but I believe if done correctly, and people like us, and by us I mean you watching, me talking, the ones of us who are in the field doing this day to day, as long as we keep our fingers on the pulse and keep the communication going and keep talking about these things, that's where the changes will come.
Was that when they tried to attend meetings, they were kept out in certain areas and they had to get a lawyer to get the records and open records acts over to make sure by putting in that those meetings are definitely open to the public and that they could have their records. So that's a little bit of a.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for doing that. And
So what she's saying is, I don't know why it's coming out so quiet on this iPad, but it's hissing because I've had to turn everything up on it so you can hear it. But what she's saying is they have direct reports of some of these council meetings shutting people out, shutting advocacy groups out, shutting services out. And the Freedom of Information Act is what I've been trying to remember this whole entire time. But that they had to even get lawyers involved to get information that should have just been file a Freedom of Information Act form and get the information. And so what they've done, and this obviously was her passion, she mentioned it more than once about the Open Meetings Act. So this is her passion. I love it. I love this passion of, she is saying in this bill, and it is in the bill right now currently, that that's done. That is done. Everybody gets to come to the meeting. Everybody gets the information. Everybody can file a request and get the information. No more hiding. No more locking people out. No more shenanigans.
and by them making them do that, they've got to give advance notice when these meetings take place.
Oh, yeah, that's it too. No more pop-up meetings. That has happened way too often, where all of a sudden, hours before a meeting, you might hear, hey, this council is having a meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. And, I can't go. No, because of this act, if it passes and they're part of the Open Meetings Act, then they have to give a certain amount of time notice saying, hey, there's this meeting coming up that anybody can come to.
Take that.
Representative Newton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate this bill in several ways. One of the questions I have, though, is the local coordinating entity has its bylaws, conduct of its meetings. The only time that, if I'm reading this right, down on lines 97 and 98, is that the prohibition on an employee, operator, contractor, or owner of any ambulance provider when they're involved in a section for a territorial zone or voting on new service. Is that right? And they can participate in the day-to-day or the monthly operations.
That is correct.
Examining the response times, discussing a mass casualty. They could be still a part of this local coordinating entity, correct?
Yeah, because they're the most knowledgeable, but at the same time, they shouldn't be involved in the process of voting themselves on. That is correct.
Exactly.
So what the representative is asking for clarity on is it shutting out all ambulance services and employees and people that, and no, I love the responses that we are the most knowledgeable about how to interpret times. And we're talking about regions, right? So you're talking about Newton County is in the same region as DeKalb County. So is Rockdale. So you got a bunch of these different ambulance companies and employees that can easily be part of review committees on interpreting data on what does this mean? What does that mean? Giving insight and they should be used as outside contractors, in my opinion, not a part of a committee, but consultant, if you will. But no, what the bill is saying is they do not get to vote on something that conflicts with their own interest. Like National wants, I don't know if they want DeKalb or not, but let's just say National wants DeKalb County. So neither AMR nor Grady nor National EMS can be on the committee or any subcommittee or anything to do with the influence of who gets that county. They have to be standing on the outside as bidders and can have nothing to do with the councils, but they can absolutely be a part of the interpretation of data, helping with that kind of thing.
The response times, discussing a mass casualty, they could be still a part of
I
this
accidentally hit 10
local
seconds back, so it
coordinating
jumped back.
entity, correct?
Yeah, because they're most knowledgeable, but at the same time, they shouldn't be involved in the process of voting themselves on stuff.
Thank you. All right, all right.
Representative Petrie.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure that I'm correct. So this is all existing land. The Board of Public Health is already in this authority
They oversee
position.
this.
None of that is not changing in any way, shape, or
That's
form.
correct. And the zones don't change. Currently, there's 10, the state is divided into 10
Regions.
zones. So all that
Regions.
maintains.
None of that has changed. But thank you.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And there's another question, but that's why it got confusing to the state representatives, because they kept using the wrong terms. They'd say they can't zone themselves. Well, the state's in 10 zones. No. The state is 10 regions covering a bunch of different counties at once. And the Department of Health and Human Resources and the Department of Public Safety, the state level department, is the king of the world. All the regions answer to that. The zones are what you're making money from and where you operate. And that's why they had to get some clarification here.
Okay, Representative Mitchell. Oh, sorry. Representative Howard.
I'm trying to make sure I'm.
Okay, I don't know what section Representative Howard is from, but I feel like what you're about to hear, I feel like either he was trying to be difficult or he couldn't understand a basic concept. And either way, you don't belong there, dude. You have zero confidence from me. Listen to what he says.
And the state has 10 zones,
The state is divided into 10 regions,
10 regions.
and those are the ones that select ambulance providers for each region.
Okay. So if an ambulance service owns a zone, then I'm trying to understand, who would be responsible?
Jesus, dude.
So the committee could, so each entity could have, depending on the number of boards, they would have, the more typical situation is they would have like local EMS.
It didn't help that the guy answering the question has a hard time communicating stuff as well. He's not explaining this very well. What he's asking, what Representative Howard was asking, is how a zone works and who goes over it. Here, I'll give you the easy example. National EMS owns Rockdale County, which is a zone. They own the territory. They run it. They're held responsible for the public safety. They answer to the commissioners. There could have been, or there can be, a council that oversees them that answers to the commissioners. With that council and the commissioners, whoever oversees that zone answers to the region director. See, done. That's how that works.
On the board, they might have a county commissioner, they might have some ambulance providers on that board.
And this is also referring to the oversight committee in Athens, which has some people from Athens Regional, some people from St. Mary's, but it also has National EMS, who runs that territory on the committee. So we're talking about the governmental oversight. Who hires ambulance service is what Representative Howard was not understanding, and this guy's not explaining it very well.
Right. And so they would make up that council, and then that council makes recommendations on who's going to be their ambulance provider on the contract.
So the council will make the decision on who would be.
No, the council makes a decision on who they recommend, but the region directors have to approve it. I think the state even has to approve it. And that was what was evident in the DeKalb County debacle, where Dunwoody was pushing. And so Region 3 made a separate council for that issue to see what they recommend. Should it stay as one piece? Should it be zoned differently? If it's zoned differently, how are you going to take recommendations for, who are you going to recommend to hire? But it still came up the chain.
With carry the zone.
They oversee and make the selections.
Okay. So is there anything to make sure that there's nobody on that council that's
Not now.
in conflict with making that decision?
That's what this bill's
They're
for.
supposed to be recusing themselves from the votes, but this bill makes it very explicit that not only are they recusing themselves from the votes, they can't participate in any of the process, either committee or subcommittee, that leads up to those, proposals being drafted or voted on.
Example, say if the chief of our fire department is on the council.
You're a
And
dumbass.
he votes, and then we have him, and he's starting an ambulance service within the fire department.
Nope.
Can he vote?
Nope.
Does he
No.
have to recuse himself?
Yes.
So he's a county employee, and you're saying the county is providing, or is he starting his own?
He's
Doesn't
starting
matter.
a
Same
ambulance
answer.
service
No,
within
he can't vote.
Within the fire department for the county.
For the county. So county employees can be on it. I'm assuming he-
The council makes recommendations to the Department of Public Health. So the Department of Public Health is the ultimate decider in the council's decision to make recommendations
See?
to the Department of Public Health.
Okay, so the council is not the final.
No, they're not. And no, your fire chief can't be on it if he's starting the service.
This was just kind of follow up on Representative Howard's, that if a,
So that's why I felt like he was trying to be either difficult or he just couldn't understand the process. And it didn't help that doofus over there isn't explaining it well enough. No, the council can only make recommendations. And yes, anybody can be on the council. Lay people, county employees, fire chiefs, post office people. It doesn't matter. You decide as a region, you can say, this is who we want on the council. They're on it. And no, if the fire chief is trying to propose the fire department take on the EMS service and provide it themselves, he cannot vote for it. That's the point of the bill. No, yes, he has to recuse himself. Yes, he has to get out the entirety of the process. He can't be a part of any of it. He has to go, okay, I'm no longer fire chief who's on the council. I'm now the person proposing, I want this territory for this ambulance service. So then you have to stand on the other side of the damn counter. You do not get the vote. Why is that hard to understand? And luckily somebody cut this off and started clarifying.
If a fire department decided they wanted to become an ambulance provider as well, they would fall under the ambulance provider restrictions
See?
of the employee operator.
There you go.
Or if they were adding a service line, so to speak, there's fire protection, and then they wanted to add EMS or ambulance provider, then they would fall under ambulance provider.
Go to the other side of the counter, sir. You're no longer voting.
Okay, that's the last of the questions. Any other questions? All right, that's the will of the committee. Can I have a motion to be passed? Do I have a second? A motion to pass in second. Is there any other discussion? Okay, there's no other discussion. So, everybody that's in favor of the passage of the substitute House Bill 264, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no. Okay, the ayes have it.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and again, thanks for your input.
You're welcome.
And then there you go. That's the end of that meeting. So that was the Health and Human Services Committee for the Department of Public Health. I keep calling it Health Services, whatever. They called it right, I call it wrong. But it took forever to get to that one state representative who got it, and that 30-second explanation that he gave at the end would have saved everybody 15 minutes. And it felt a lot longer than 15 minutes because it's drug out and the communication is very poor. How do you write a bill? How are you in front of a committee to propose a bill and can't explain what a zone and a region is when that's in the bill? How are you a state representative going, I don't get it. Can the firefighter vote for his own service? No. The whole thing is about clarity, transparency. even playing field on reporting and getting rid of the good old boy damn system. So I am happy that House Bill has been, House Bill 264 has passed committee. So now I don't know what it does. I don't know if it goes to the state Senate, the state House. I'm not sure where it's going to land next, but it's still got a ways to go before it hits the governor's desk to be signed into law. And it could change. And that's the problem. It can change anytime between now and if it passes. And of course, at any time it can get shut down. It can get voted out. But thankfully, the commission unanimously came together to pass this bill. So that's the long ranty version. The short and sweet version is about clarity, it's about transparency, it's about reporting equally, and it's about setting up the future so that we can get that the state, that the people responsible for oversight can get the uniform information they need to come up with actual standards that meet the needs of the communities. And those needs are in this bill actively acknowledged are different. That's the short and sweet of it is. No longer can you be on a committee to vote for your own service to get the 911 thing. You can't be anywhere near it. You have to report everybody has to report everything. So even if you vote for yourself and you pull strings, if you ain't doing the job right, you're out, is what's going to ultimately happen. So that was a long-winded breakdown of what happened there. And that's the thing. I have no idea that was going on. I would have gone there myself and taken video and recorded, but didn't know what was happening. So that's it for EMS Underground today. Thanks for coming out and listening, watching this. If I have some misinformation, I'm always open to listen. Hit me up, Charles at GAIEMS.com, or post on this video here, or message the page, Georgia Institute of EMS, here on Facebook, and I will listen to you. I will take your insight. I will argue when I think you're wrong, and we'll have a conversation. But progress has to be made. We can't do it behind closed doors anymore, and that's the biggest part of this bill that gets me excited, is everything's going to be part of the Open Meetings Act if this passes. So, again, coming up Saturday the 16th, psychomotor exam. We could use bodies, both proctors and patients. If you still need hours for your recertification, then we've got one last ditch effort for you at the end of this month of March. I think it's the 24th through 28th, but it's that last Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You have to do all 4 days for advanced and paramedic to get the national 25 hours required for national registry. And it also will count for your state of Georgia recertification. Hit us up with any kind of questions you have, and thanks for watching today.